Hey guys, Toolman Tim here. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. It's February 13th, 2022, and this is episode 70. Had to look to make sure of the workshop podcast. Tonight, we're going to bring on in just a minute Kerry Brown of Strong Roots Resources. He's going to talk about leaving the rat race behind and creating something special for himself. But real quick, like always, we'll get a little of the housekeeping out of the way. So first off, if you haven't entered the second annual Groundhog Day Prepper Gear Giveaway, this is your last warning. You have about 24 hours. Tomorrow night, this time, we will be doing the live draw. So if you haven't yet, go by toolmantim.co and get entered, please. I had kind of an unofficial benchmark of entries that I wanted to have, and we're getting really close. Another 13, I think, and we'll hit what I was hoping for. So anyway, number 2, and this one's really cool, but the growth of this podcast has been seriously exciting. It kind of blows me away. If you look at the growth chart, it's kind of on a 45 degree, and I'm really, really pleased with it. And people ask me sometimes, they're like, Tim, what's the easiest way to support it? You know, if I love the podcast, whatever. Well, the easiest way is if there's a special episode or an episode that you really dig, that really speaks to you, just take a minute and share it on social media. That's the easiest, best way to support the entire workshop out. And the other is, I get asked this a lot too. Hey, Tim, do you get a recommendation for this gear, that gear, whatever it happens to be? And the answer is almost always yes. And if not, I'll make something. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that at all. But go by toolmantim.shop and you'll see right now I got about 100, 150 items with another 100 I've been working on to bring in stuff I've used and abused, stuff that's made me money or saved me money in my handyman business. And the cool thing is, even if you don't buy something on the list, but you just start your shopping at toolmantim.shop, it'll support the content I create. And of course, I'll be grateful. So thank you. All right, guys, let's bring on, without further ado, Mr. Kerry Brown. Hey, Kerry, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on tonight.
No problem. People who followed the workshop for a little while might remember you. You did the community member spotlight way back. Might have been the second one, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but it's been probably 6 months maybe since you did that.
I think it was in August because I remember it being exceptionally hot.
Yeah, you guys know about heat down in Tennessee, don't you?
Holy cow. Yes. Heat and the humidity. It'll get you.
I don't miss that a bit. That's probably one of my favorite things about the prairies is how dry it is here. You know, we get some moisture and everything, but yeah. So, for those of you also, you might have caught Kerry yesterday on the Lots Project live stream podcast. I got to listen to most of that this afternoon while I was working, and it sounded like you guys had a great time. But for those of you who, for those out there in the listening community or, in the live stream, who is Kerry Brown? Tell me all about you. Where are you from? What do you do? That kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So I'm a native East Tennessean. I have spent my entire life in this area. In fact, I think I'm 5th generation East Tennessean. So, but I'm mostly just a regular guy. I'm 38 years old. I have a fantastic wife, a couple of cats, and a dog. We have a small cabin on family property, and which is for the most part off grid. We're powered via solar for the most part, and backup generator and all that good stuff. But mostly I'm just I'm just a pretty laid back gardener type, outdoorsy type, mildly contrarian, maybe half redneck, half hippie, something like that. Just very much working on purposefully living and designing my life.
I love that. Contrarian. I think I was born contrary minded, but you learn to let it mellow a little bit as you get older, don't you?
Yeah. And Brian and I were talking last night about that, about like the different ways of kind of looking at that. And I try to be contrary in that I don't just follow the crowd, but I'm not a complete like grumpy old codger either. I don't really want to go down that road.
Kerry's a good feller. Sent me a book in the mail not too long ago. That was a hugely appreciated present. That was a surprise too. I like surprises. That was fun. So
yeah, I'll do that.
So yeah, a couple weeks ago or about a week ago, I did the Trash to Treasure episode, and I said that whoever had the best story or the best get or find or whatever, I'd send them a couple of stickers in the mail. Not that it's a big deal, but Kerry told me a story on Telegram, so I'm going to ask you about your punk rock years.
Yeah.
So this sounds pretty funny, guys. So anyway, I'm going to send you some stickers. Not that it's a huge deal, but your story won. So tell us about your punk rock days.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. So when I was in my uh, early-ish to mid-20s, I was basically a member of a bicycle gang. We were in the city at the time, so we were in an area that's like pretty rideable, close to downtown and all that. And it was kind of funny because I was the oldest by far. Everybody else was in college. And we basically just rode bikes all the time. We would do alley cat races, which is kind of like a scavenger hunt on bicycle.
Okay.
We would do every Friday, we would do an event called Critical Mass, which was a way of kind of bringing awareness to bicyclists. We would ride on the roads, and by law here, like a bicycle is a vehicle and it's supposed to adhere to the same rules and laws of the road as cars do. And so, but we would go out in a pack, but not to block lanes, but we would ride single file. But the idea would be like, see more bicycles, become aware of bicycles, and maybe fewer bicyclists would get squashed by cars.
Sure.
So we would do that, but mostly what we did was drink 40s and dumpster
40s beer or harder stuff?
Well, 40s were favored because it was a lot of alcohol, very cheap, and you could screw the cap back on and throw it in your backpack and zip off before the cops busted us for playing also bike polo, alley cat races and bike polo. So we play bike polo in parking garages, and occasionally we'd be told to leave. So
that sounds like you had the makings of like an 80s action film, man. That's freaking crazy.
It was kind of like the Sandlot, but on bicycles.
But in your 20s or early 20s.
Yeah.
And so when you say punk rock, did you have the hair?
No, I pretty much had the same this thing for a while. So
yeah. I just, when you told me punk rock, all I could picture was the spiked up with the studded leather vests and the whole works,
Yeah.
But so you did some dumpster diving then too, did you?
Yeah. We would group up in a truck or my old 4Runner, and we kind of knew what and it was mostly grocery stores that was none of us had much money for food, so you could find tons of perfectly usable food in grocery store dumpsters. So we would just kind of team up and help each other get in and out, because sometimes getting in and out was the hard part, especially if the dump truck was on the way. So the garbage truck. So you'd have like a lookout, and you'd have, people helping you get in and out and passing stuff out and dividing it all up and kind of sharing it around. So
you're like a kind of a little, a bicycle commune kind of.
It was, we were probably, we would do most of those, I say kids because they were so much younger than me. Most of them like lived communally in rental homes, and we would have like house bands and house shows and stuff like that, and just kind of that DIY underground lifestyle. That's what we did.
I love it. I don't know. There's just something about those little niche communities that it don't matter. I could listen to people's stories all day long. I always love hearing where people come from. I think where you come from, it shapes who you are, whether you decide this is exactly what I don't want to do, or whether you decide this is exactly what I do want to do. Either way, it kind of points you in the right direction,
Yeah.
And we decided we're going to finally meet in real life too. I guess we're both going to be at the spring workshop in LFTN in April, about 2 months from right now. Won't it be, or a little bit longer?
Yeah, we're going to do it. I'm sure we're going to have a great time. I'm sure we're going to find something to have to go fix, but that's cool. I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
We always try to leave Nicole's place a little better than we found it, so that's kind of fun. And we're going to have a great crowd out there. I'm sure the energy is going to be awesome.
As long as we don't have to shovel any snow, I'll be all set. So
hopefully not.
Yeah, I know. You know how it is. So yeah, I kind of felt this way when I talked to a buddy a few 2-3 months ago as well, but I kind of feel like we're a bit of a kindred spirit. So a lot of the things that you've done, Kerry, is kind of some of the similar things that I've done. But I guess start with your story. Like, you know, you're coming on to talk about leaving the rat race behind, and you know, I know that you're a paramedic and that kind of stuff. But take us back, however far back you need to go to kind of set the setting for where you ended up right now.
Sure. So, yeah, I began a career in EMS, working on the ambulance in 2005 when I was 21 years old, and
Oh, wow.
I did that for 15 years. During that 15-year span, there were times where I worked full time. There were times where I worked part time. Um, there was a 4-year span in there where I was part time while I was acting as a caregiver for my grandmother who had had a severe stroke. So I was always on the truck, but there were times where I was working 40 hours a week, and there were times where I was working 20, and then there were times where I was working 70. So there was that. But you know, over time, that field changed. Corporate EMS changed. It kind of stopped being fun. It
Mm.
started being over stressful. It started being actually rather dangerous at times. And I was just, you know, it was just classic burnout. So at year 15, I started looking seriously at what else I wanted to do with my life, because everybody who works on an ambulance long term is like, try not to do this forever. Like, try to, you know, if you want to stay in the medical field, a lot of people go into like respiratory therapy, they become nurses, they go to pre-med or what have you. And like, as a whole, I wasn't happy with the healthcare field. And I was also very unhappy with corporate culture as it was.
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of exited incrementally. So I spent 2 years working a 24-hour truck to kind of like where there was obviously like mega overtime to be made. And that enabled my wife and I to get all of our debt paid off except for the mortgage, which was reasonable. We weren't in over our head on a mortgage. And so we got that squared away. Angel put together a super tight budget where we like literally track every cent in and out, and built up an emergency fund. And I felt like finally I had wiggle room to explore other options. So my first idea was to become a carpentry apprentice. We have a local union here. You can join. You can learn how to be a carpenter. And it turned out that really wasn't a good fit for me. Weirdly enough, I'm supposed to be training to be a carpenter, but they put me to work in a steel mill doing like steel framing, steel wall framing. It was miserable. I did it for 2 weeks, and I've never really walked off a job before, but I pretty much walked off that job. It was toxic and dangerous with very poor training and just terrible, like absolute lack of safety culture. And I was coming from a field where like EMS, while it's not perfect, we work really hard to communicate clearly, to watch each other's back, prevent one another from getting hurt. You know, we really try to like encourage like safe driving practices and stuff like this. And when I went to that still place, I was just like, I'm not sure I'm going to come back with my hands still attached to my body. It wasn't worth it. And it was like 50 cents an hour more than I've been making on the ambulance. So I left. I gave them the courtesy call and I left. And at that point, I was like, well, I need a job. So I called up an acquaintance at the time who ran a bakery, and I knew that they'd been needing help, like kind of like dishwashing, equipment maintenance, fix this, fix that type stuff. And I'd worked part-time for them before for a short period of time. And I was like, can I come back? Y'all need me? And they're like, yes, come back. So that was October of 2019. And, so I was working at the bakery, good job, good people. I was friends with most of them, good environment, but it was a placeholder. And around that same time, I was starting to put together my business idea, the idea of Strong Roots Resources. The name came to me while I was washing dishes one day. So we get to March of 2020, and as we all know, everything goes sideways.
Yeah.
and the bakery closed because at the time they didn't know, like we didn't know how bad stuff was going to get. And we weren't designed for like takeout and delivery and all that kind of stuff. And so the bakery closed and laid everybody off. They have reopened, I should say, which I'm happy about because it's a family business. But 6 months, we're laid off and we're drawing unemployment, but that does not. I just can't receive free money. I mean, we use the money wisely, and it enabled us to do some things. But I had to make something happen. So I had been mowing a few yards here and there on the side for neighbors, and so I just started adding yards. So like I said, it's spring. Everybody's looking at their yard. Everybody's home, and they're looking at all the things they want to do in their yard. And Strong Roots Resources was born, and I went like full side hustle. It just took off, and that was just like within my own little neighborhood. At the time, we were living in a fairly like densely populated kind of typical city neighborhood. Everybody's got like quarter acre yards, and before I knew it, I was mowing and gardening and maintaining and putting in garden beds and just any like small time landscaping stuff, and I've just stuck with it. I've altered some things here and there. There's stuff I don't do anymore, stuff I prefer not to do, but the core customer base got built during that time.
So I got it. All right. So earlier today, guys, I was listening to Kerry's other interview, and I had a holy shit moment. Like literally, I had I got a 40-pound pry bar in my hands. I was breaking through ice, and I literally said "holy shit" out loud. So tell me how much you were making per hour as a paramedic, and then maybe somebody else will say "holy shit" out loud.
So I was under Tennessee licensing. I'm like an EMT advanced. So there's like EMT advanced, and then there's paramedic, critical care paramedic. So anyway, I'm kind of like right there in that middle. It was $14.33 an hour when I left after 15 years. So
oh my God. Like, and I know I was never in the paramedic field. So I worked just selling building supplies and stuff, but it just like, I got chills even. How in the world, number one, anyway, $14 an hour is peanuts compared to what you do. Like, damn it. My daughter is 11. She's in here tonight. She just babysat 3 different jobs and made $10 an hour. You know what I mean? So like, talk about a kick to the nuts, man. Like
it really is. Yeah. Yeah. And like I mentioned to Brian, like the culture of the place coming from management was the meetings will continue until morale improves. That's very much what it felt like all the time. And, some of us, I can kind of tell a quick funny story here.
Yeah.
One of my former partners, she and I worked together night shift for several years. And she was, we were just like, basically bitching one night, sitting in the truck in the middle of the night, running calls back to back, and exhausted and everything. And I was like, this is like being in an abusive relationship. Like they tell us they're going to let us go home on time, and then they don't, and so we decide to come back and do it again for another day. And they tell us, no, really, we're going to let you guys go home on time. And then they don't, and then we'll run like that one good call where you really feel like you made a difference. And then it like gives you enough energy to put up with it for another 6 months. Like it messes with your head. It's like gaslighting to the max. So
I was just going to say, that's exactly, it sounds like an abusive spouse who's like, oh, you didn't do that. I didn't mean that. Or I didn't really say that,
Yeah.
But yeah, like Clark Deacon here, guys. He just put up that my sister-in-law is a paramedic in Saskatoon, so that's the next province over from American listeners, and $40 an hour, 80 for overtime. So
I'm sure it's now, but still, like I'm sure there's 14 is probably like the base starting wage for somebody just out of school, but
that was still what 2019 at the time, or when you left as a paramedic.
Yep. So, yeah, it's kind of insulting, and it is one of the biggest gripes about the field is the compensation.
And I mean, to be fair, and we all know this, that no matter how much money we make, if you're miserable in a job, money doesn't help. But if you're kind of on the fence, a decent salary can be enough to make it worth going to work every day,
Yeah.
So, okay, so you brought us up and you went through from being a paramedic and then to the bakery. Well, a short stop off in the steel mill for a couple of days.
2 weeks of the carpenter. Yeah.
Yeah. Then the bakery, and then you started Strong Roots Resources. So talk about how the size of backyard gates built you a niche in your area.
So almost everybody had a chain link fence with a 36-inch gate, and if that. And a lot of people too would have like steps up from the sidewalk and then their gate. So there's no getting anything aside from a push mower through that. Nobody, the big companies, they don't want to mess with it. It's a job for small time folks, and even small time people. A lot of people still don't want to push a regular old push mower.
Mm-hmm.
But I quickly learned that I didn't mind too bad, especially when I could clear $35 to $45 an hour mowing a yard with my headphones on, enjoying a good podcast.
It's freaking incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, like, everybody who's listening, just think about that. If you're looking at starting a handyman business, you're looking at starting a landscaping business, finding an underserved area in your, and it doesn't need to be a lot. Like, literally, like you said, you're picking up, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but the droppings are the leftovers from the big guys, and you are making basically three times your hourly rate as a paramedic, going out, getting a tan and listening to podcasts. You know what I mean? Like that's friggin' incredible.
Yeah. And I'm using maybe in a full day, maybe a half gallon of gasoline, if that. I mean, it was just, sipping gasoline working that way.
And being an entrepreneur, like, I think that's one of the best hedges against inflation too, because, if your costs go up, your rates go up, right? It's not like you got to wait an entire year for a review and find out whether you're going to get a 15-cent an hour raise or not, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I did. And so, 2020 was my first year operating pretty much full time, doing yards. And in 2021, I raised almost everybody's rate by about $5. And because it was a fuel cost, and also I was commuting more because at that point we were out here on the farm 15 miles away. Mm-hmm. So I worked that in, but you know what? They didn't care because they got the same guy every time. They knew that I wasn't going to show up and weed eat their flowers or, run over the dog or anything. Like, they knew I always closed the gate, and just those little things mean the world to people.
The gates, I did that once, and I let my customer's dog out, and they didn't know it. I didn't know it. This when I was first new, and I didn't realize the importance of closing a gate because I was a dumbass. And anyway, the dog was fine, but
yeah.
So I remember, I don't know if it was last summer or the summer before, you sent me an email, and I'm off script here a little bit, everybody. So, if you can stop me, Kerry, at any point, but you had a bit of an issue.
All right.
Yeah. You had a customer that was maybe trying to take you for a ride a little bit. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Yep.
Do you want to talk about it a little?
Yeah, sure. I doubt she's listening to this, but I had somebody claim that there was some that I had done some damage to their house, and it was one of those things where I seem to remember when I first started working there that it was damage to siding. I seem to remember that it was already like that, but my error, and where I take personal responsibility for this, is that I did not document it and mention it to her first. And so at which point I could neither be 100% certain that I didn't make the damage worse, nor could she prove that I actually did it. Because siding is brittle and, things, I don't know what else is going on in that yard, but I'm not there. So I basically ended up having to spend a modest amount of money to replace some sections of siding. But it just left me with such an uneasy feeling after that I suggested, I basically gave her 2 weeks notice to find somebody else.
You're fired.
And you know what? That's one of the things about running the business is I didn't want her to go around saying, Kerry's wrecking my siding and make it sound like I'm intentionally damaging somebody's property. Of course I wouldn't do that. But it was one of those, it was an early lesson. It was a very early lesson in this, and something that I keep in mind now if I'm evaluating a new property. And yeah, Clark, I like take pictures. That is, I mean, it's worth it. And I kind of had I had a situation where I was asked to take a railing down from a house, but not replace it. And that made me, and it was a very high porch. His porch was, 6 feet off the ground, and it made me really uneasy. So I screenshotted the text from the customer.
Good call.
And I put safety tape up on the porch after the railings are off, and I took pictures of that. And that's been a few months now, but it's just one of those things that's like, So I'm starting to be a lot more discerning. That's this whole field will make you do that.
The busier you get, the easier it is to be a bit discerning too, isn't it?
It does. And when you don't feel like you have to take every single job, when you feel like you can just be like, sorry, I'm not gonna be able to make that happen for you. Thank you for asking me. Yeah. Absolutely.
So here's another one. I've heard you mention it before in the past, but I think this is one of the things that clicked the most when I heard you say this. And I'm like, because it doesn't matter how long you're in business, but you said whenever somebody asks you to do something, the internal dialogue in your brain says your default's almost no, because you're nervous that you haven't. Talk about that a little, because I struggle with that even still. Like it's awful, but I do.
Sure. I want to say hey to Alan real quick. Alan's my buddy.
Oh, he's nice. A great. Hey, Alan. Yeah. Nice to have you.
Yeah. Man. So the automatic no, I really do wonder where that comes from, because it's like, is that a holdover from being a toddler or something, where your parents ask you to do something and you're just like no, because
I don't know. I think it comes out of honestly, it comes out of a place of insecurity with me. You know what I mean? Like there's no getting around it. Like you can be as confident as shit, but there's always that little, you know what I mean? So
yeah, it's that. I think I've kind of wrestled with this a bit myself, where feeling like the kind of the whole imposter syndrome thing.
Yep.
Even though I'll start to discuss something and I'll realize like I'm actually relatively knowledgeable. I'm pretty sure I can pull this off. But yeah, I try to go through like a mental checklist of like, why am I saying no? Is it do I just not want to take the time to research how to do the job if it's new to me? Is it does it weird me out? Like I'm starting to get kind of weird about being up on roofs. So there's only a few types of gutters that I'll do. I'm not crazy about ladders. My balance is kind of weird. So is it like a safety issue that I'm concerned about? Or is there like something about that customer that doesn't feel right to me? It's like, it's weird. I will do certain types of work for certain types of people, but not others.
Oh yes.
And you know what? I'm glad I'm able to make that decision, because, in the corporate world, you do what you're told to do, more or less. So
I found, and a lot of times that the more well-to-do customers, the ones that don't balk at all at your price, have the least complaints. That typically, they're happy to have you, and they're okay. They'll basically, within reason, you name your price and they're okay with it and you're okay with it. And they're typically okay with the work. It's the ones that are pinching pennies and things like that sometimes, I don't know. And I don't want it to, but it does, it comes across that way sometimes, and it's tough. And like you said about being a little uncomfortable about roofs and things like that, at one time I would have said yes about going up on a roof and pushing snow off. And that's a hard NO for me now. I just, you think about it, like it only takes a second. And I still, I go up in the summer and walk roofs and clean eaves troughs and stuff and gutters, but yeah, no, I get it. And I bet when you first started out, it was a lot harder to say no, was it?
Yeah, just because I felt like, need to earn money, need to build the customer base, need to make this happen. And, but my wife was like, I would also like you to come home in one piece, please. So I've got my responsibilities there as well. So yeah, it's a matter of thinking it through,
Is she a good, well, obviously she is. You guys have been together 17 years, but Is she the type to kind of push in and be like, you know what, you can do this? You know what I mean? Mine does that quite a bit.
She's incredibly supportive, and she'll call me on my bullshit too, which is great.
Yep.
If I'm trying to scamper away from something because I'm uncomfortable, she'll be like, let's talk about this, you know. Yeah, she's a great listener, and thank goodness she's also a wonderful bookkeeper, because I would not want to do the books for the business. I mean, she is, I give her, you know, we split the credit 50-50 in terms of this success, because she's on the ball with the books.
Man, see what I mean? I told you, we're like kindred spirits in some ways, because I'm the same way. Like, my wife is both my encourager and my bookkeeper. I mean, she runs her own business now too, but that's important, you know, because I don't know if you're like me, but I will put off doing invoices. I hate doing invoices at the end of the month, because I don't know. I will go out and shovel shit or cut grass or whatever all day long. But when I got to sit down and do paperwork, I'd rather get kicked in the head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hate it. I hate to sit at a desk. It's not for me. I mean, I think that's just that whole handyman mindset. Like, just give us something to tinker with. Don't let it be numbers on paper.
Yeah, let me fix your problems, you know, and I guess I'll get paid in the end, but it's yeah. Clark says, I don't touch electrical. As a carpenter, I could get into a lot of trouble. And I really, you know what? I won't lie. When I first started, I did touch some electrical. I mean, I have all the experience with it, but I won't do it anymore except for myself. I don't know. What you got any rules on that, or do you even?
Yeah, I don't mess with it. It's one of those things you know, if I have to tinker with something here at the house, I know how to shut everything off. I know how to test things, and I've got 2 electricians in my back pocket who I can call, who have come out here to help me with stuff. But yeah, it's and I know, like, when you're working like within a specific trade, like, you're expected to stay in your lane, and you could really cause yourself a lot of headache if somebody feels like you're tinkering with their stuff, you know. So I get that.
And your buddy Alan there says saying no is harder when you're more hungry too.
Yeah, you know, I kind of learned a lesson on that. On the outside, we had hired, before we had a better network of people to kind of work with for our own projects. We hired an electrician to run power just underground, just from the house to the workshop at the old place. And I realized that we'd made a bad decision when the guy shows up and he's like, well, can you go ahead and give me some money up front so I can go get some materials? And I'm talking about $200 or $300 in materials, not thousands.
Oh no. Yeah.
And I was like, well, we'll all go to Home Depot together is what we'll do, you know. And he asked for cash because he was like, yeah, we haven't had any food in a couple of days. And yeah, I mean, it was a sad situation. And so one of those things that kind of looked like maybe some substance use was digging into the profit margin instead of growing a business, which was unfortunate. But yeah, that's kind of one of those things. Don't go down that road, you know.
So maybe we'll backtrack here. So it's good a time to segue as anyway. But I think the first interview I'd heard with you, Kerry, was when you were on Living Free in Tennessee with Nicole last. So I remember I was very stressed out at the time because I was working on a full month rehab of a complete wrecked rental. I had 30 days to get it done. I should have had help, but I did it all myself because I'm a stubborn bastard, you know. And I spent many 12-hour days listening to podcasts, and I was listening to yours. And that we had talked before, but I didn't know your whole story. But do you want to talk a little bit about, I guess, your choice in sobriety?
Yeah. So I was maybe not a full-on hellraiser by any means, but I definitely was very active in the kind of local craft beer brew pub kind of lifestyle. And but when I turned 35, I realized that I didn't feel very good. And I was sitting in the ambulance, and like everything was stiff, everything hurt. I was gaining some weight, and I'm only 5'6", so 170 pounds does not look good on me. Mm-hmm. So I was realizing that I needed to make some changes. That I had a responsibility to stay well, to be able to take care of Angel, to be able to take care of my parents as they age and all that. So I started with a weight training program and closer to keto style diet, and discovered quickly that you cannot continue to drink while doing those two things because you will actually feel worse. And so one morning I woke up from, having imbibed too much before. And I should back up and say, like, I did not get drunk on the ambulance. I did not drive drunk. I didn't do things like that. But I was consuming more than was healthy, especially for my body size. Yeah, like it was interfering with my ability to be a well-balanced human being. So yeah, I woke up with like the hangover from hell. And I was sitting on the front porch with Angel. We were having coffee. I was off duty that day. And I said, hey, I'm not ever drinking again. And she was like, okay. And she knows, like, when I have made a decision, that's it. Like, if I make a statement like that, that is not me just running my yap. That's how it is. So she was like, okay. And I said, I'm not telling you what to do. Because she would drink some too, but not nearly the amount I would. But I said it would be much easier for me if we could do this together, or at the very least, if the alcohol is never in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, no more. We won't do it anymore, period. And that was it. And we just went cold turkey. Fortunately, I did not have any like withdrawal symptoms, so I wasn't physically addicted. It was more of a mental crutch. And that pretty much changed everything. I mean, clear head, body feels better. I got strong. I got more fit. And if I was still a drinker, I wouldn't have started this business. There is no way. I might have left the ambulance. I might have done something else, but I don't think I would have had like the focus and the drive that it takes to really make a business happen.
It's funny how one life change leads to another life change, leads to another one. Eh? You don't necessarily see where the end result is going to be, but looking back, it all makes sense. Eh?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I had to really, I mean, it caused a complete redesign, because it turned out that the people I was hanging out with, maybe they weren't really friendships after all, because I didn't really hang out with them after that. There's only one or two times that you end up going to the pub, not drinking, trying to hang out with people who are drinking. It's not fun, at least not for me. And I ended up cultivating different relationships that were not based upon consuming alcohol and all the silly, useless conversations that you have when you are consuming alcohol.
So that was you were 35. So was that 2-3 years ago? How long ago was that?
So that's 3 years. So I think, or it's like, I guess I'll be going on 4 years. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
it's been a while.
That was the catalyst that kind of made you start doing some changes, I guess.
Yeah, it just really opened up, like my energy. I had energy again. I didn't realize like how sluggish I was all the time, always being probably, baseline toxicity levels. It let me, like I said, it really let me, start finding like what my purpose was going to be, even though like I don't know if my purpose is necessarily like a handyman or whatever, or a landscaper, but it's definitely like to live what I kind of took to calling like, the proper human lifestyle. I kind of borrowed a little bit of Dr. Berry's work, and I was like, well, if I'm gonna do the proper human diet, how about I do the entire proper human lifestyle? So for me, that means like being connected to nature, noticing what's going on around me, not giving a flip as much as possible about the silliness going on out in the world, and being, purposeful in how I engage with everything.
So that kind of leads. So what's the best part of it? Like, I mean, I know you love being outdoors and, and the freedom that you found, but what do you kind of point at as for people who are like, and I know it's different for everybody, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who'll be listening to this that are like, damn it, I would love to just tell the man to go screw and start my own business, So for you, what's the best part of it?
The best part is that I get to exercise quite a bit of control over how I earn money and how I engage with people. And like I said, I did it really incrementally, and I kind of took being laid off as an opportunity. And, you know, and I haven't spoken about this part a whole lot because it's still kind of a sore point for me. But when I chose not to return to the bakery when they reopened, I kind of burned a bridge. And so I think I think people have to be willing to accept that you may burn some bridges in the process. I had agreed prior to everything going crazy in 2020 that I would stay on for a full year. So the bakery was starting to reopen. I think it was in September, and that October would have been the full year, because they had so much trouble keeping people in that position that I was operating in. Well, after being laid off for 6 months and starting a business, and I had all these clients and all these contacts, there was no way I could do both, you know? And so I emailed my supervisor / was a friend at the time. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be able to return. I have a completely full schedule with this client base now. And I was basically told that was very disappointing on a personal level. It was basically like, well, I'm happy for you, but screw off was pretty much how it came across. So it was kind of this weird backhanded thing. And I was like, because I talked to Nicole about it. She had kind of counseled me a little bit on how to communicate with that exit strategy. And, you know, she was like, well, that happens sometimes, doesn't it? Like, yeah, it does. So,
man, I mean, I could see, like, my dad always used to, I mean, my dad's never run his own business, but he was always like the head meat cutter, like a meat manager in a department, you know? And he would always say, you know, I never ever begrudge someone for doing better in their life, no matter how bad of a position it put me in, you know? And when I think about it, and I don't want to, you know, whatever, however you want to put it, but you were literally laid off for 6 months. Is that right?
Yeah.
So at that point, I would feel like whatever commitment you made before was null and void. And I would have felt that way if I were the employer as well. But I guess everybody takes things differently, you know?
Yeah. And I was trying to, you know, and to be honest, I was angry at the time, and I had all kinds of room to get all self-righteous and everything. But I recognize, like, the person this was coming from, like, they were afraid of losing their family business. I cannot imagine the level of stress that would have been like. I understood, like, I think in her position, I would have been disappointed too. But like you said, I felt like, well, this agreement is probably off the table now. Like, everything's changed. And they were also saying stuff like, we can't guarantee how many hours you'll get. We can't guarantee exactly where we're going to need you to work. And I'm like, well, I can't. And it was on the other side of town. I mean, I was looking at a 35-minute commute, you know, so I was like, this makes no sense. And I'm sorry. And I felt bad, but, you know. So anyway, yeah, to kind of answer your question for people who are trying to exit, if you can do it incrementally, you know, try it that way. It's the whole kind of like side hustle your way into a little extra, like, seed money. And that's kind of what I did. I just kind of kept stashing this seed money away so that I could end up doing a little less labor and more of where I'm getting out and I'm like consulting and helping people like build homesteads and understand their land and do a little bit of kind of like design assistance.
That's all. You did it the right way. You did it the exact opposite of how I did. I got burned out at a job, walked away, and said, well, I'm doing my own thing, you know, but you know, no, that's awesome, man. So you build up some, and of course I recommend this to a lot of people, you know, build up some seed money, and you built your client base gradually over time too. Hey.
I mean, it was gradual, but it's also like exceptionally fast. Like, it seems like there was a time where I was just adding 2 or 3 more yards a week to where I think at my peak I had 40.
Oh, wow.
And then the second year I took it down to about 25. And then, and you know, sometimes like people move and things change and whatnot, or they decide that, you know, I'm really going to mow it myself this year or whatever. And then they call me in July because they're over it, you know. But yeah, even then I was just like, it was startling how, like, I mostly just use the neighborhood Facebook page. I would keep an eye on that. Most of my clients were within 3 miles of my house. And, you know, and this is a tip for people. I see this all the time. If you're kind of doing the side hustle thing where you're looking to provide some kind of service, some kind of physical labor, when somebody posts on the group page, I'm in need of somebody to come clean my gutters, don't comment, like, don't be like, call me at this number and just leave that comment. Say, comment on the post and say, hey, Nancy, this is Kerry. This is something I'd be happy to help you out with. I'm going to shoot you a PM. And then PM them, give just a small bit of background. Maybe say, like, I've done, gutters for a couple of people over on Atlantic and Oglewood Avenues. And let me know when it's a good time. I'll come by and see if it's something I can help you with. Because there's something about that little extra personal touch that matters. Take that extra 30 seconds. I got more work that way by just being direct.
Becky and I, like my wife, again, my big supporter, that first year I was doing it, she was still kind of kind of half in the stay-at-home mom thing. So she would jump on absolutely anything. She'd be like, if I can do it, she knew if I could do something, she would message somebody immediately. And I'm telling you how quick you can build a customer base just by going after the odd things. Hey.
Yeah.
So, the best part, I guess, was what? The personal autonomy, being able to make your own decisions, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Just really embracing the personal responsibility aspect of it. Generally, if I didn't have any room to be mad at anybody except myself. So that made it, that made it workable. And I work really hard to kind of adopt like the stoic mindset and also the permaculture mindset of seeing the problems as the solutions. I kind of try to put those two things to work. And that's not to say there haven't been times that I've been incredibly pissed off on a job with either how I bid it or how long I thought it was going to take or what equipment I was going to need. But I learned.
Sucked up it. When you've underbid one and the whole time you're just gritting your teeth saying, oh boy, am I doing this,
Yeah.
So what, okay. So we know obviously one of the benefits, but what sucks or what's the worst part of being your own boss?
Well, you don't have anybody else to blame for one. You can't pass the buck. And I think learning to discern people, learning to and kind of being on the ambulance, you get a feel for people. So I kind of had a little bit of that already. You can kind of tell somebody's like full of shit or whatever. But I think I had trouble estimating time, like how long it would take me to do something. That was a big learning curve. And not being too much of the nice guy. Like I've got a couple of people, they're older, they're on fixed incomes, and it's not that they don't want to pay me and they don't stiff me or anything like that, but whenever I'm there, it's just kind of like, well, I need a little help with this thing, a little help with that thing, and that's fine. But I'm gonna have like 2 spots, and once those spots are occupied, I'm not gonna be able to do that for anybody else, because if I show up at Miss So-and-so's house and she's got 4 or 5 little extras that she needs me to do because she lives alone and she's widowed and whatever, I get it. I take into account like, okay, I probably need to add an extra hour to this job today because I'm going to go clean out dust bunnies from behind the dryer, so that's or understanding my time. Angel and I learned real quick when we started building the homestead out here and doing the cabin and all that stuff. Good God, double everything, double the time, double the cost, double the frustration. You definitely don't double the fun like the bubblegum commercial, because we learned that it was I guess it's just one of those Murphy's laws or something like that.
So have you gotten better at being able to balance or figure out the time you need?
Yeah, and I don't try to double up jobs anymore. Sometimes I would do like, okay, I can go knock this out in 3 hours, and I'm going to drive 5 miles over here. I'm going to knock this out in 2 hours. I just stopped doing it. Mm-hmm. I ran the estimates for gas, and I'm like, there might just be a day where I just have 3 or 4 hours of work, and that's it. And that's okay, because I'm only using $7 in gas, Yeah. So it's because, inevitably, like, you'll have doled your chainsaw chain out and you thought you had an extra in the box, but you don't. So you're sitting there on the, on the bumper, filing a chain, trying to finish a job or whatever. So yeah, I quit doubling stuff up, and I just basically quit trying to push myself so dang hard.
So what do you, I don't know, what's your favorite job to do? Talk about that a little bit. I always like hearing that.
Oh man, I really like building garden beds, like brand new garden beds, which is something I'm wanting to do a lot more of this year. I'm cutting way back on the mowing. I'm only going to keep one like contract I have with a small neighborhood. And I really like taking either somebody's like kind of neglected, overgrown, formerly garden bed, ripping all that stuff out, getting down into the soil, getting the crabgrass out and all that stuff, and then bringing in lots of amendments. And what's even better, I love it when people just go buy their own plants. I had a bunch of jobs where basically it was all like middle-aged women with knee problems, and they're like, I don't want to do all this labor and I want my plants in, but I want like soil that I can work with and be able to add stuff as I go. So they would go buy their plants and have them sitting on the porch ready to go. And then I would basically do like all the soil prep and bring in the mulch and do all that and tuck their plants in, and kind of sometimes they would like arrange the plants where they wanted them and I would just tuck them right in where they were. And I just really liked that, be able to do that transformation, because a lot of times, especially like for like your average kind of suburban or urban home, I can do a job like that in 2 days and make pretty good money doing it too. Especially like I've got a little electric tiller that doesn't go crazy and it isn't super noisy, and it just lets me just like clean out old stuff, kind of get like a nice clean area to work with, pull out rocks and all that kind of thing. And and I think because especially like customers just love it. Like they've been looking at this, unsightly area in the front of their house for whoever knows how long. And then, they come back from work one day and there's this like, it's like almost an instant transformation and they love it. So that's super rewarding.
I was going to say, you get to, I love jobs where you get the, you make progress. You get to see the beginning to the end pretty quick,
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's get rid of our little spammer here while we're talking. Been getting more and more of them lately. So, so talk about your, what did you call it? Was it urban permaculture or something along those lines?
Yeah, kind of like the urban permaculture, urban homesteading movement. So I started doing this. We bought our house in, I don't remember. It was like 08, 07, 08, something like that. Had a house in the city. And Angel had asked me like what I wanted for my birthday. And I was like, I want a house because I want a yard. We were living in an apartment. I grew up on a farm, so I needed to be back in the dirt. And we found just like a very affordable pre-housing crash, this disaster, little, affordable, reasonably priced 120-year-old house. And the yard was just super neglected and the soil was in terrible condition. And so I just kind of gradually over about 13 years wood chipped the yard, built raised beds, put in animal systems, had chickens, had quail, had kind of like a wet weather pond, and just did all of these little projects and eventually just kind of tied everything together into like I'm having a blank on my word here, but like a closed loop system. Yeah, a closed loop system where, like I did all my composting on site. I harvested firewood from like people had their trees cut and just leave it on the curb. I would go grab firewood. We had a wood stove. So we basically were living, country style, but right there in the city. And the neighborhood we were in, like there weren't really any restrictions. I mean, within reason, like you could pretty much just do whatever. There was no like HOA or anything like that. And I was just always like, what else could I grow? Where could I fit it? And that's when I started really like digging into the science of microclimates and how to utilize microclimates on your land. So
and how big of a property did you have?
It was 1/5 of an acre. I think so. It was like basically 50 feet by 100 feet with the house taking up 950 square feet of that.
Wow. And then, so you put damn near a decade and a half into it and you guys moved on eventually?
Yeah. So like after we had our best gardens ever and everything, I had everything like pretty much exactly the way I wanted it. And we had rehabbed parts of the house and we had rehabbed the shop and everything. We sold it in 2020. I took Jack's advice and got out of the city. And we we knew like we didn't want to live there indefinitely. It was not our forever home. And at that point, our finances were in good shape, and we had, just the mortgage. But I was just like, man, what would it be like if we didn't have a mortgage? And how could we make that happen? And so we ended up selling the house to some people we were like kind of acquainted with. They had done some rehabs in the neighborhood, and we were kind of friendly with them. And I would help them out with jobs from time to time. And they actually wanted to live there, so they bought it and rehabbed it. And I won't lie, it was hard, like getting away from it, and like all that work I put in, like heart and soul and sweat and tears and all of that, and a fair amount of blood. And it was hard to leave all that behind, but we just knew like it was time to move on. So we did that in October 2020 and began the process of getting our place here at the family property where I grew up, getting that established.
So now you can kind of start from scratch and hopefully not make any type 1 errors and build something kind of special.
That's the idea. So I'm just now completing like my full 1 year of observation and interaction with the area in which I'm going to put in my systems. So my mom and dad live here. My brother lives here. And then we were able to get our cabin placed kind of on a certain corner of the property that it's very hilly. So we basically found like the flattest spot possible that made sense for solar gain for the panels and all that kind of stuff. And we are, like I said, with the 1 year of observation and interaction under my belt, I now have an idea of where I want to place stuff. I've got some stuff in already, but I haven't sunk any kind of significant funds into anything yet in terms of like animal structures and all that.
Clark, I know you mentioned earlier, but Clark was just wondering where you're located.
I'm in the Knoxville area. We're in
East Tennessee still. Is that considered?
Yeah. Yep.
I wanted to bring this one up too. So Big Mo, if you're still in here listening, he said, I would love to get out of the rat race. So I put a follow up there and just wanted to know what Big Mo would like to do if they could do absolutely anything. But what would your advice be, Kerry? I know you've talked about it a lot, but what would you say for somebody that says, I'd love to, but I can't, or I'm not sure, Oh, here's a follow up. Let's do that before you touch. Said, not sure. Something where I would not have to have much interaction with people. After 10 years of managing 50-ish people for a major oil refinery, not sure how much I can handle.
Working in an oil refinery, I bet he's got a ton of, like, working with people is skill in itself. There's probably a ton of knowledge there to be shared. That's a field that's been around a long time, but continues to, change with, the way technology changes and all of that. So, I mean, there might be some teaching he could do, or if he's just got an outside interest, the easiest way, we all do it. We've all got stuff sitting around that we don't need. Flip that stuff onto eBay or Facebook Marketplace, and that can be your food money. I mean, you give yourself a cushion, a 2 or 3 month, spending money cushion, and you're going to feel so much more empowered to chase whatever it is.
Bingo. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening right there, that is the key. Because if you're not coming out of it, like if you're stressed, but if you can put yourself together a little slush fund so that you're not beholden to the daily grind, it makes it a little easier, doesn't it, Kerry?
Yeah. Because I've never sat on any kind of significant capital in my life. Like, I've been a wage worker. I have never had more than, if we had like $1,000 in an emergency fund, I felt so freaking secure,
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, I don't have a retirement plan. I don't have a 401k. I never signed up for it. I mean, we've got like really good life insurance policies, and that's about it. So, and no debt, fortunately. But just start flipping stuff, and I just kind of monitor the conversations in various neighborhood groups and just see what people are looking for. I mean, don't be too proud. Some people just think, well, I only know how to do XYZ. I bet you know how to do more than that. It's just not in the forefront in your mind.
Kerry's spitting fire tonight. First, have a slush fund, and then don't be too proud to try anything. And how about I know you've got a supervisor that travels with you quite a bit. I Trip the dog, right? You said
Oh,
just like
yes.
my little Maisie, but you take her to the dump all the time as well.
Yes.
And good money. Am I not wrong? There's good money in garbage.
There is. I wish I get a little jealous, I have to admit, when I see what you're able to pull out of the dump. We will get in deep shit if we dig through the stuff at the dump. So like where we go, it's not a landfill. It's just like a drop off point. So they've got the various like regular garbage and recycling, but then I see what people throw in the scrap metal and it breaks my heart every time. I'm just like, if I couldn't fix it, Dad probably could. And then we would just split the proceeds or whatever. But I see people post all the time on like the local neighborhood groups that are like, please don't take your metal to the Knox County scrapyard. I will come pick it up. I'll come pick it up for free. And I don't know how successful those people are, but I mean, I've seen like four-wheelers. I've seen riding lawnmowers where the paint was still in good shape, which tells me something on that can be repaired. And that's, kind of like the scrapping and the pickup stuff. I haven't found a way to break into that yet, but I want to, because man.
Do you guys ever have bulk pickup day or large pickup day with your dump there at all? Like where you can put big items out, come around?
Yeah. In the city they do. And that's actually that's kind of one of the things I miss about being in the city, because I would like drive up and down the alleyways and pick up stuff. And I got more like building materials that way. I mean, occasionally I would find, old tools or yard equipment or whatever. And sometimes it was just junk, but I mean, take an afternoon to figure out if it is or not. So, it's, that's just, there's a couple of guys I watch on YouTube show how they like take apart metal so that they get, like separate the brass from the aluminum and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, such a
he says, I'm 50 years old and have been with the company for 25 years, work over 60 hours a week. And I will bet you dollars to donuts that you could work half as hard and make, I mean, I don't know what you're making right now. I'm sure it's pretty good, but man, you can make, and I'm not lying when you can make six figures doing this kind of work without killing yourself and enjoying the hell of the life a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure he knows, like we're always here to support people who are trying to take on that kind of lifestyle design by all means.
Yes. And that's what I was going to say, Big Mo. You can follow up with me, follow up with Kerry as well. You can email me at therealtimcook@gmail.com. I'll give you any advice, good, bad, even if you don't want it, I'll give you unsolicited advice, but no, but yeah, follow up with us, man. We'll do what we can to help you because it's out there. I mean, this freedom's awesome, isn't it, Kerry?
You can't beat it. And even with the stress that comes with it of always kind of be like, okay, I want to make sure I have enough work scheduled or make sure of this, or, sometimes you have to be careful about, having good insurance coverage for damages and those kind of things, but it's still worth it. I mean, I cannot imagine trying to go back to a regular job. I mean, if I had to, because we need to eat, and for whatever reason I had to, I mean, I would, but it would be like a stopgap until I could figure out the next step, because it's just, it's the way to go. And it's what this country is founded on. And, you guys too up there, like that entrepreneurial business mindset is I think is like the very baseline of exercising your freedom.
And you're a fellow anarchist, voluntarist, and we haven't talked a whole lot about this, but I'm sure you're into preparedness too, eh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and we didn't prep this question either, but how do you find that entrepreneurship fits into the lifestyle of preparedness and prepping?
Well, if you're, for one, it's an automatic way of like building community. So, unlike having an employer who can, and in Tennessee, you can get fired for anything at all, pretty much. It happens. I would rather have a list of 40 people half of which I could probably call tomorrow and be like, hey, my schedule's a little slim right now. Is there some work I could come out and do for you guys? Or do you know of anything, any of your friends or family need anything done? And I could probably wrestle something up pretty quick. So that ability to build that kind of community. So I have like you, Tim, and like the LFT and crew and all those people, like there's that community where we kind of spitball this stuff. Like Alan and I have been talking a little bit about like, you know, what can we tackle? We're looking at maybe doing greenhouses or something like that. And there's just always this network of doers and coordinators to kind of lift each other up and help us tackle things. And I'm not saying that isn't present in the corporate world, but in my experience, the corporate world was very toxic, and people got torn down. People got, there was a lot of criticism. There was a lot of, well, I'm not going to work any harder than that guy because, we make the same amount regardless of how hard I work. So, and you didn't see a return. So in this field, you see a return. And if you don't, you got to figure out what you're doing wrong.
Absolutely. I love it. I never really thought about your customers as being an extension of your community as well, but you're absolutely right.
I mean, those people, I mean, those people to some extent do care about you. And it's not just because you're providing a service, but if you provide it, like I would kind of do little add-ons when I was doing yards. I would be like I would fix a gate, like a hinge was coming off or whatever. Or I noticed, that a customer had a busted back window. And I texted them when I was finishing them. I said, did you know your window was broken? And they were like, no, actually, I did not. I guess somebody pitched a rock or something. I don't know. It wasn't me. I didn't do it. But it was kind of like, had somebody tried to break into your house, And because I was always operating within a very, kind of the same little radius, I knew like whose dogs were whose, or somebody's dog got out, or, I knew the kind of like oddball, interesting people that would wander through the neighborhood. And if there was somebody who was not one of the typical folks, like I would kind of know like, we'll pay attention here and make sure somebody's not trying to, take off with somebody's stuff or whatever. But it was a very reciprocal relationship.
So Clark, this is kind of somewhere in between a question and a statement, but he said, finding more work is my struggle. So do you have advice for finding more work?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of digging around. Like I said, I monitor various neighborhood groups. In some ways, I've had more success using the Nextdoor app versus like the Facebook groups. Not as many people are on it, so things don't get buried quite as quickly. And you can make like a business page on there too, just like you can for like a Facebook account. And and there's kind of like, and I sometimes still will answer wanted ads in like the little like local newspapers. We've got like kind of like community scale newspapers, for just like this side, like the northwest side of the county or whatever. And occasionally be like, I need somebody to help me rehab my garden, and they have like paid the newspaper to put an ad in, which is like very old school, but I found work that way. So and don't discount asking people who you're friends with if you can do work for them. Mm-hmm. And ask for references if they're happy with how you've done. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I have worked, I've done work for a cousin, and I've done work for, people who I'm related to, who I'm friends with, or I've gotten referrals, and there's no shame in that. That money spends just the same,
Yeah. And Clark, I was going to lead into this too, but Alan, I look back and Alan had kind of mentioned it, but he said, bring donuts to I'm not sure what he means by the convenience center attendant, but food in general. And I don't mean this in a bribery kind of way, but Ryan Collette, he has built a handyman business as well. He's been doing that for a couple of years, and he followed my advice a couple of years ago, and he did up a whole bunch of cookies with his business card printed on them. Him and his wife did them, took them to all the local real estate offices in his town, and just said, hey, I'm hanging my shingle. Here's my cookies. Enjoy them. If you have any work, that you need done. And real estate people are incredible because they can get you into property management. Sometimes their rates are a little thin, but boy, they can bring you a lot of work. So that might be something to look at too, Clark.
Yeah, that's a great idea too. I followed up with a couple of agents before. I'm not super tapped into that network last time I checked, but I actually am more so now. So that actually is a really good avenue because I can use that for now that so many people are trying to buy land and property in Tennessee. That's where I want to grow the homestead consulting aspect of the business, and get a little more into that side of things.
And that's almost like a whole nother business, isn't it?
It is. I'm doing it all under the same umbrella. My CPA seems to think that's okay. So, but yeah, it's I basically find people who are wanting to develop homestead infrastructure, and I go out and I visit with them. We walk the property. I take notes. I listen to what their goals are, what their abilities are, what they're interested in, and then I help them craft a plan. And like you said earlier, number one, avoiding the type 1 error, the irreversible and or incredibly expensive error. And what I think I'm starting to find a little niche where I'm helping people understand what is going on with their land, what it means if your land is sloped a certain way, what's going on in your forest, what's going on in your fields, what kind of pasture forage are you working with, just different aspects that kind of taking an earthworm's view of the land. It's taken me in that direction at least. So I'm just following that road.
That's cool. I love it. Not to jump around here, but Clark, this is great. I love when we get good discussion on the go here. But so Clark said, I don't know if you've looked into this, Kerry. I do it quite a bit, but foreclosure cleanups, have you done any property management for anybody or anything?
I haven't, and I wanted to pick your brain about it because I'm not sure how to break into that. So
okay,
where do you?
Yeah, we'll spitball here for a minute. I know, but so Clark's in Saskatchewan, which is literally next door to Alberta. So, and in Moose Jaw, I know the area a little bit, but so the best way to get into this is you drive around town, and from what I understand, this basically works the same in North America wide. But if a place gets secured by a property management company, normally they put those 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper up in the window, secured by this company or whatever. And so for me, I ended up getting into it because this company was looking for somebody in the area, and they called the local real estate agent and they said, hey, the only person we know that might do it is Tim. They called me, and it's turned into a fairly lucrative enterprise for me. But so two things: make sure your name is online attached to property management in your area. So whether you have a Facebook page or a website, so that people can find you. Because my other client found me through Google. They said, I seen you do odd jobs in property management. Are you interested? But so going back to those sheets of paper, every one of those sheets of paper, every bank has a different company that they work for or with. Sometimes one company will do a couple, but they're all going to have an 800 number on there because, if you see something wrong with the house or you need access to it, you got to call. So what I would suggest doing is call that number and just say, hey, I'm looking to talk to the property management company that's doing this. Sometimes what'll happen is somebody's already got it, but they're traveling too far and they don't want to have to keep doing it. So they're willing to sublet the work to you. Or more times than not, there's a metric shit ton of turnover in this because it takes a while to build. It's a really good side hustle to build on, because you get one and then you get another and you get another. But so call those numbers, make contacts, and just be like, hey, I'm Clark and this is what I do. You may not need somebody in the area right now, but when you do, call me. And it might not happen for a week, a month, 6 months, a year, but they'll keep you because they have a hell of a time finding people, because they're normally a state away, or, for me, they're in Edmonton, which is 2.5 to 3 hours away. They don't even know the geography of this area, right? So it definitely an area to get started.
Awesome. I took notes on that. So I'm gonna look into that for sure. That could be something that would be really ideal for kind of crappy weather, wintertime. And frankly, I wouldn't mind doing it. And I know in the city we would see this a lot where somebody, there would be a foreclosure or a tenant would get tossed out or whatever, and they would just pile everything on the curb, and it would be unsightly. And then of course people would come through and pick through it, make a huge mess, and then it'd get rained on. And it's like, I'm pretty sure that's called littering. And, people would call like the city 311 number and ask them to handle it. But I'm like, there could be an opportunity there,
So here's another one. And you and I both being, voluntarists and anarchists, we don't like to say this, but so by law enforcement, I've done fairly well with that over the years. So talk to your local town, because what's going to happen is two things. Somebody who has property management, or like, so somebody had a deadbeat tenant that left again a metric shit ton of garbage, right? So a lot of times those, people own these properties, but they don't live in the town, right? They live, like Nicole with, she lives where she lives and she has properties in Nashville. So, one of the places that people contact all the time looking for recommendations is the local town, or the local municipal office. So if you call and say, this is what I do or whatever, a lot of times most towns don't want to enforce things that they don't have to, right? So they're going to call the person and be like, hey, you got an awful mess in your front yard and it needs to be cleaned up. And then they're like, well, I don't live here, or I'm infirmed. Can you give me the name of somebody that can help? So then, they're going to say, okay, call Tim, call All Seasons Maintenance. And they usually do. But then sometimes there's empty properties where, like, there's a ton of empty houses in our town right now that have been walked away from, that are in limbo. And so the town has to enforce them. The snow has to be removed. The grass has to be cut. The garbage, anything that's a safety issue has to be enforced. But in our area, the town isn't like they need to have a third party do it. You know what I mean? Like they can't both enforce the law and get paid to enforce the law. So anyway, I do quite a bit of that. And if you're there, somebody has to do it. Right. And so I'm on both ends of it. And a lot of times they tell the person like, hey, call Tim and he can help you out. And then, I normally charge people a reasonable amount, and I never gouge, but there's a lot of work there too.
Sure. And I mean, you could look at it as like you're doing a community service, because if those properties aren't maintained, they're going to become dilapidated. There's going to be a rodent problem. It invites like vagrancy and fires and damage and all that kind of stuff. So that's right up there with like picking up trash off the side of the road. You're taking care of business around your home,
Absolutely. And so for Clark too, that's another area to call your local town and be like, hey, I'm doing this or I'm doing that. And another thing too, Kerry, and not that you need more business, but landscaping or lawn mowing and stuff, you can let the town know you do that as well. Because again, if they're out giving people warnings for unsightly premises or lawns that need to be cut, they can say, hey, here's the name of, company A, company B, company C. They like to have choices so they don't look like they're playing favorites either, right?
Yeah. I actually saw recently the city put out like the bids, like you could submit a bid and submit your business for whatever they call, neglected properties or whatever. So, which if I'm trying not to get roped into like a super big like mowing schedule again, but if it's like jump in there now and again type of thing, I'll go do it. So,
and property management for landlords is great too. That has become probably 25% of my monthly income. I've got around 15 rentals right now that I look after on a full-time kind of basis. And, it's a bit of a tie. If you want to go away, you got to hire somebody to, work for you while you're gone. But at the same time, I can go sometimes 2 weeks without a phone call. And then all of a sudden I'll get 4 phone calls in an hour or 2 hours, but
cool.
if that, because what I find with that is, other than the drop dead emergencies, you can fit it in around all your other stuff. And normally it's kind of a flat rate and there's money to be made there too.
Yeah. So you just kind of make yourself like a check route, like just kind of like when you're in an area, you just stop there, look things over, make sure there's not water pouring out of the ceilings. Is that kind of how you just kind of fit it in on like a routine drive?
Yeah. If it's empty, yes. Right now, mainly the empty ones are my bank properties. I've got can't remember, 8, 9 of them, something like that. And it's about a 5-hour round trip for all my properties. So
Wow.
I have, yeah, because we live in a rural area, right? But it's okay. I got it, and so I go from, property 1, 2, 3, work my way through. And this time of year, I have to do the snow, have to do it every 2 weeks. Oh, and in the summer, I have to mow every 2 weeks, right? And then you got to walk through and check the properties out and make sure that they're, they haven't been broken into. There's no water leaks. The water's supposed to be off, but I had one time somebody broke into a home and turned the water back on, and the pipes were frozen. We hadn't had approval to fix it yet. And the water for 2 solid weeks ran from upstairs down through the ceiling. So yeah,
good times.
Always fun,
right? Yeah.
So does anybody have any other questions for Kerry? Or, this has been a good discussion so far, but so where do you see your business going, Kerry?
Yeah, so I'm definitely the consulting side of things, the property visits, and then the big audacious goal, to steal that from Nicole a little bit, is to get the property we're on now productive, to hold classes out here, to hold workshops. I would like to have a separate building exclusively for that, and eventually go down maybe like a private membership association kind of arrangement. Nice. Because that's kind of our main goal. Like where we're at now, suburbia has become built up all around us, and like Dad gets calls and letters every week, people wanting to buy this property, and it's very much a situation of over our dead bodies will that happen. The property's been in the family since the 30s. I feel very strongly that I'm supposed to be a steward of this land, but it's a lot to manage, even with all of us up here. So, yeah. So I want to get some animal systems here just for our own like personal preps, like just because I like doing that. But yeah, mainly we're just going to get people out here. We'll do, I'm prepping some sites to do hip camp. So I'm looking at little income streams here and there. I'm putting together a worm composting system where I can build and send out education kits for, people who want to start worm systems, and just the ideas abound. That has never been a problem. Dialing in is more of what we're trying to get focused on this year. And we are hosting the first portion of a permaculture design course on April 9th and 10th. So that'll be kind of like the first big thing that we're doing. And we get the partner. I'm not teaching it. I'm basically being a host and assisting the coordinator. And the teacher, they are an incredibly knowledgeable individual, and they're going to like provide the tent and that kind of thing and all the materials, but we're going to have the site and have, provide as many amenities as we can make happen. And that's going to be another avenue for building community and getting doers over here to help us out. So we're kind of holding off this this endless suburban development, where we're kind of sitting on some of the last green space on this side of the county. And we want to keep it that way. And we have to figure out how to do that sustainably as we go forward, because it's just, it's mom and dad, me and Angel, my brother and his wife, and none of us have had kids or going to have kids. So we've got to like get this into the hands of people who are going to take care of the land going forward.
That's all. I'm proud of you. I love, man, it's like putting out your big, hairy, audacious goals. I love like making them public. Boy, that all of a sudden gives you a little more like people are going to follow up with you and ask you like, how are you doing? Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that's awesome. And I love that's the other fun part about being an entrepreneur is it's usually no problem coming up with good ideas. It's just a matter of figuring out which one of those is the best of the good ideas. Hey.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's okay to try stuff out. It's, don't pull the whole, analysis paralysis. Like it's okay to, especially, when we're not talking about dropping thousands and thousands of dollars, to just give it a shot. I wanted to throw out one more tip that kind of came to mind, something I'm going to put together, hopefully. especially for Clark and people who are looking for the side hustle thing. If you live anywhere near any kind of body of water, especially a river or anywhere where like kayaking and paddling is popular, throw yourself together a little shuttle service. I'm looking at doing one. We have a waterway. It's called Beaver Creek. It's a small creek, but you can paddle it. And over several years, there has been a kayak club and a nonprofit that has been working on clearing out the log jams and putting together like 4 hours worth of paddling. Several or creek miles as they call them worth. And I was digging around in the group the other day, and I was like, I don't think anybody runs a shuttle. And there's a lot of people now that they work from home and they make their own schedule, and they want to go paddle in the middle of a Monday. And I was like, there might be an opportunity there. So
I meet them and bring them back to their vehicles at the end, I guess.
Yeah, because like the drop off and the takeout are not very far apart, and they're on the same road. They're only like 3 miles apart. But if you want to go by yourself, you're like, what a lot of people do is they launch and then they get to the takeout and they have to like call an Uber or something. So they lock their boat up to a tree, take the Uber back to their car, drive their car back, load the boat up. So I'm looking at doing like a value add where I help you launch, I come pick you up, and like the pickup spot, you have to carry your boat across a huge field basically to get to the parking lot. So I'll help you get your boat back on, we'll put them on my trailer. And kind of like the creek itself is like, you have to do a lot of portage and pull your boat out and get around some log jams and whatnot. So nobody takes like high end equipment on this. This is kind of like it's very like punk rock kayaking. So, I don't think anybody's really going to balk at, throwing their boat on my utility trailer and us throwing some tie downs on it and taking it back down the road. So, I'm throwing that together because I don't have enough to do. So why not?
It never stops, right? Becky and I are in the process of actually purchasing our first couple of rentals, and we're also in the process of launching a private label coffee company because we're in Canada and nobody is doing that. So we've got access to some really good roasted coffee, and we're going to do what Nicole and Brian and my buddy James from the Prepper Broadcast Network are doing all in the States, because Canada's this wide open place that we don't have access to quite as, it's really hard to ship shit across the border, so we put it out there, we make it public, and then it gives us some accountability, right?
Right on. Go for it. I mean, always worth trying stuff.
Yes.
We'll surprise ourselves sometimes.
So, man, we've been an hour and a half already. This is great. But so, yeah, what do you got coming up, and where can people find you, Kerry?
So the website, strongrootsresources.com, you can get a hold of me there. I welcome emails. Anybody wants to chit chat about anything, I'm glad to help. strongrootsresources@gmail.com. If you're in the East Tennessee area, I've got under the events tab on the website, I just got it posted up today, I've got the permaculture course information. And that course it's 1 weekend per month, April through August, I believe. So it is a considerable commitment, but if you're looking at doing that, it's worth your time. That's a skill that can be applied in so many areas of your life. And I'm going to be doing a microclimate presentation this coming weekend at Special Operations Equipment in Camden, Tennessee. So make it out to there. There's going to be a bunch of it's going to be like a mini LFTN reunion, and of course we're always happy to bring new folks into the fold.
Nice. Well, thanks, Kerry. This is we'll have to have you back. I never expected I knew we'd have a good conversation, but I didn't necessarily expect we'd have this fruitful of a conversation on beating ideas back and forth. Hey, that was a lot of fun.
I enjoy it, and I really appreciate the work you put into your content creation, because there have been so many times where I was just worn out, busting a hump, trying to get through the day, just taking care of business. But your ability to maintain that good attitude and that encouragement, that it's can't thank you enough, man. It makes such a huge difference, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Kerry. No, I appreciate that. I do my best, so yeah. But if you want to hang on for just a second, you can hang in the background and I'll close up and I'll be back with you there right quick.
Sure thing. I'll hang.
Thanks, Kerry. Well, guys, I don't even know what to say. That we'll have Kerry back on in a few months. We'll have another. If you guys have some entrepreneurship questions, maybe we'll do an entrepreneurship roundtable. Get 3 or 4 people on here some night. And we can all kind of get. Maybe we'll get Joseph Mills on, and we can just talk about a whole bunch of really cool money making ideas. But that was just anyway. I've said it, but thank you so much, Kerry. We had a great conversation, and yeah, what else can I say? I hope you guys appreciated it. He was shooting some fire there, and it was great stuff. So, where do you find me next? Tuesday night, Fireside Freedom, 6:00 Mountain Time. We got Letty, Amy, and Brian and myself talking about strong relationships and marriages. That's going to be an awesome episode. Thursday will be the next episode of Preparedness. We're going to keep the entrepreneurship train running, and we're going to talk about making money with preparedness, which is going to be great. And then next Sunday, my guest will be John Dowie. He's going to come on and talk about starting a microgreens business, and I bet you a whole bunch of other side hustles. So anyway, guys, I say it all the time. Thank you, Martinson family. I appreciate it. But I appreciate the fact that you guys are willing to come and hang out for an hour, hour and a half. And I appreciate everybody who listens, the growing audience on the back end, the recording. So thanks, guys. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.